Yeah, but it's like I hear me and then I hear me again.
I can't help you with that, Snow White.
Where is it? Oh, I'm putting it right here on the desktop. Is what I'm doing.
I'm just waiting for World War Cat to start any minute now.
Feline overlords fighting for
I,
territory.
for one, welcome our new feline overlords.
I made,
We are now recording
Sure.
in a grown-up and awesome way, like a bunch of
right.
guys who know how to do podcasting, because that's what we are. Professionals. Professionals.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome to episode 6. This is the best.
My God, it's 6 already.
It's
Jesus.
6. This is 6. Like last one was 5. This is 6. And we are shallow and we are pedantic and we are recording and it is the week before Halloween and we are drinking porter and gin and we are prepared to discuss things of no import in a long drawn out and analytical manner because that's how we roll around here.
It's pretty much what we do.
It's pretty much what we do. I am Andrew.
I'm Mike.
I'm Kieran.
Kieran, who is joining us for the podcast for the first time, which we really should have done before, I feel like.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Kieran is kind of the third leg of the stool here at Shell and Pedantic. He's been our artist from the beginning. All the covers for UJ, Unnamed Journal, have been done by him.
Yep.
Including the Space Pterodactyl on our most recent issue 24, which is kind of fantastic.
It's pretty sweet.
It's kind of long.
It is.
It's definitely, I think, our longest issue.
And Kieran did some really great stuff with the interior. Like that nice sepia tone you added to it. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, I had to. That was just like, I wanted it to look more like a tome because to me the Unnamed Journal has always been sort of like. It's always inspired me to think of it, and this is the appropriate time of year for this, as almost like a tome one might find at Miskatonic University under great guard.
Right. Yeah.
It's the restricted section of the library. Yeah.
It is. It's a. What's the word for that? Not a grimoire.
No, grimoire
Yeah.
is the proper word for that.
Yeah, it's like an old copybook. Yeah.
Grimoire. It's
good to have our artist in residence.
Our artist in residence. Yes. Possibly the only person who's actually made money off of Shallow and Pedantic so far, because we keep paying him.
I mean,
yeah.
Hey, look, man,
Yeah. Speaking of which, did we pay him for the most recent cover?
Not yet.
Okay,
but we'll get it.
We'll do that. We'll do that. One of us.
Well, I got PayPal all set up because I had a commission to make custom dice come in recently.
Oh, cool.
That's how the customer needed to pay me.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I almost got it down. All right. Oh, yeah, it's going to be fucking great.
How do you even make custom dice?
I had to get that. First, I model them in a 3D program, and they want a specific font, and instead of having like a number for the high symbol on a set of dice, they wanted like a specific symbol.
Okay.
And so then I print the dice because I have a resin printer. I print the set of dice and then send it off to the customer, and they're going to use them as masters to make molds off of, and then cast multiple resin copies of these dice, and that's how that works.
Wow.
That's super cool.
It's about time. Oh shit! It's the first time this resin printer's ever made me any money.
Yeah, man. That's how you do.
That's cool though.
We didn't think we were going to be making any money either, but we have like patrons, and we're getting sales now. So
slowly but surely.
Yeah, well, I got a hit on the Gumroad, and the guy who bought the new issue of UJ, I set it up on Gumroad so that it would like $3.49 is like the basic price, but you can pay what you want, and like the suggested price was $2. this guy gave us 5. So
It's great.
yeah, that was exciting. And that popped on my phone because I've got the Gumroad app, and it popped on my phone. Like, it was really nice sitting there on my deck and like, dang, $5. I was like, for the singles collection? No, for the issue. Yeah.
It's great. No, it's $5 you did not have before.
$5 I did not have before.
That that's one step further to our own magazine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
This is how it ends.
We'll catch up with you soon enough, New Yorker. You called us mad. Mad, you said.
And they were right, but now we're actually making a little bit of money. So
yeah,
fuck it.
They're not wrong. Not wrong. That's where we are right now. So
validated financially. God damn it.
yes, this is not a joke anymore. This is no longer a joke literary magazine. Although it hasn't been that for a while.
Yeah.
No, the stuff is legit. Like, yeah, there's this humorous content, but like, what am I even looking at?
What are you looking at?
I have a lot of things going on the screen here. Don't ask too many questions.
You know what? You're right. I'm just gonna sit back.
Do not search too deeply into my methods, for you will find I'm a sick, sad little man.
Yes. Yes. Don't ask questions. You'll only get answers.
Answers lead to madness.
Yeah, that's true. That is every Lovecraft story. Don't find out about this thing. Finds out about that thing. Regrets it forever.
Which makes me wonder, has Geiger ever done a cover for a Lovecraft collection? I've seen some Geiger-esque illustrations of Lovecraft, but I haven't actually seen one by him.
I don't.
He did have his art.
So, as far as I know, yeah, like Gieger he was on Omni a lot, and he did like album covers for like Danzig, Carcass, The Dead Kennedys,
Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
I'm pretty sure that's not true.
Was that one of them?
No. Brain Salad Surgery. Brain Salad Surgery. That is a Gieger album cover. That's one of his most famous ones.
Oh, yeah.
My parents loved Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
That was...
So, by the way, people out there in internet land listening to us, today's topic is the artist H.R. Gieger. Best known for his visual design on the Alien movies.
Pretty
Yep.
much.
And it was also his art that was the species, yep. So the HR stands for Hans Rudi.
Hans Rudi. And he is a Swiss gentleman.
Yes.
I mean, I don't even know what to say about it. His first name is Hans, and that right there brings me no end of delight. He doesn't look like a Hans. He looks like...
I don't know. I'm looking at his picture right now from 2012. He looks like a Hans to me. He looks very Hansian.
Yeah, he looks like Hans Bad Touch, though, really. That's the uncle you don't want to sit next to.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good Hans. He looks lumpy and terrifying, but that's appropriate given what we're talking about here. So he was, as I said, Swiss. Lumpy and Terrifying. Now that would be a good album name, Lumpy and Terrifying. That should be our podcast name. What am I even talking about? Lumpy and Terrifying. God, I'm lumpy today.
It's that clubfoot guy come around in the yard again. Yeah. He says we can pay him in bourbon to go away.
That sounds like a good deal. So, this was...
who am I kidding? It's me. No,
It's you. This was your topic, Mike. You wanted to talk about Gieger and his influences and his role in pop culture or whatever else you call it, like his art style and where it is felt, or wherever you wanted to roll with this. So why don't you take the helm here and Gieger us?
Sure. So Gieger himself. Yeah. Now you feel dirty, right? No. Yeah. So his style is very much like the natural world meets machines, and it's very sort of cold in a lot of ways. I mean, not just like tonally, but also in terms of the composition. When you see a lot of the stuff, it's very just sort of chilling, just in terms of the subject matter and also the composition. It's the kind of like intersection of the natural world and the mechanical world that you didn't really see so much prior to Gieger's, sort of getting getting exposure. Like I said before, he did a ton of album covers for quite a like large cross section of musicians, and he was frequently featured on the cover of Omni magazine.
That was his bread and butter,
yeah. No, and he was on that quite a bit. I know that some of his early concept designs for Jaworski's, I'm sorry, I butchered his name, but his version of Dune that, and then Lynch ended up actually making the movie, and it was interesting to me because I was doing a little bit of research on Gieger before this episode, and apparently he always wanted to work with Lynch because he was actually a huge fan of Eraserhead, and he thought
I believe that.
Yeah, well, and he thought that was like a lot of the concepts that he was going for in his art were actually very hewed to very closely by the movie Eraserhead, and he always wanted to work with Lynch. To kind of, just to have some sort of collaboration. And Lynch did actually end up using some of his concept art for Jaworski's Dune. And, some of it was sort of incorporated into the movie, but it was like early conceptual stuff. And I think the Throne for Harkonnen and stuff like that was one of the things that he designed that some version of made it into the Lynch film.
Sure. That's a whole other. We keep talking about Dune. It just keeps happening. First episode we were talking about Dune, and I got really excited last month because that trailer came out, and now of course it's been announced we're not going to see it until
ever.
Yeah, it's
never. Does never work for you?
Yeah, the day after forever. Yeah. So yeah. But
it's a shame. That and the Batman, which was another trailer that I saw, and I was like, I don't hate this.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be fun.
I'm supposed to hate this, but then Robert Pattinson got coronavirus, so yeah, I think the movie industry has like angered God or that deal with the devil that Bill came due, and we are in trouble. They're in trouble. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a little while before things return to normal for sure.
You can rent out an AMC movie theater now for like $99.
What?
Oh yeah, they're desperate for money.
Aren't they declaring bankruptcy? I feel like they are.
Well, the one down the street from me has those leather recliners and a bar, and I'm like, like,
I could, yeah, I could see that.
I mean, get 10 friends to get together. I can split that out $10 a piece. We space ourselves out throughout the fucking theater. That's socially distancing.
I hear you.
And we have access to the bar.
I hear what you're saying.
We watch something terrible, preferably. Something I've already seen so I can talk over it and no one will get mad.
Yeah. It has to be something dreadful.
Just put on Bad Taste or Meet the Feebles, and everyone will be too busy like trying to have a conversation, ignoring what's happening in the background.
What part of I said I would invite my friends?
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You're still mad about the Meet the Feebles at Balticon, aren't you?
No, I'm not mad about it. I just wish I had brought more to drink with me, because as the movie goes on, it gets worse, and then I was getting more sober, and I hadn't brought anything else with me to maintain my anesthetization. So,
yeah. Drinking yourself sober, watching Meet the Feebles is not something anyone would recommend.
There's a DVD copy of that Kellen left here. It sits on my shelf, and I just look at it, and it looks back at me balefully, daring me to put it in some sort of playback device. So I can tell myself, it can't be as bad as I remember it being, but the sane, solid part of my brain, which is a very small part of my brain, says, no, man, you know the truth of this. You know it's terrible. Even the amusing parts of this movie are not worth the visual terror.
The frustration.
Yeah, it's best to handle with tongs and then placed into a lead-lined box. I mean, that's how you handle a copy of Meet the Feebles. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of biomechanical horror,
right.
Oh yeah, no, exactly right. It actually fits. That's on theme.
Oh God.
Yeah. Oh dear.
So I found out that there's a few. If you're a Gieger fan and you want to check out some of his art or the designs in person, there's actually sort of 4 go-to places. One is the H.R. Gieger Museum, and his second wife, who has survived him, Carmen. She's actually the director of the H.R. Gieger Museum.
Okay, cool.
And then there are actually 3 Gieger bars. 2 of them are in Switzerland, and then one of them is in Japan. Gieger, I think the one in Japan was the first one that was built, and he actually disowned the Japanese bar because they didn't use his final designs. Like, he sent them initial sketches of what he was thinking of, and he was sort of thinking that there would be, kind of a couple of rounds going back and forth to try to design this thing. But they just went with the first set of, drafts that he sent them, and he didn't like it because it wasn't the final version. It wasn't what he was moving towards, I guess. But I don't know if it's still in business now.
It's not, according to his website, the H.R. Geiger website. The one in Tokyo, Japan, no longer exists, and there was an H.R. Gieger room at the Limelight in New York City, and that no longer exists.
Yeah, the Limelight's gone, but I think there's still the 2 bars in Switzerland that are, I think they're still around because he's a bit of he's still sort of a celebrity in Switzerland because there's not too many Swiss celebrities actually. So
no, there are, especially one with this wide-ranging an impact.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, he sort of lived the rock star lifestyle when he was around. He was, he dressed very flamboyantly and, would go to, fancy dinner parties, sort of dressed to the nines in crazy outfits. And, I mean, he became an artist, in the 60s. So some of, this is sort of even around the time of say Andy Warhol and all of that. So, I mean, there were a few artists that were alive and, making money off of their art and sort of had the opportunity to enjoy celebrity rather than just sort of living hand in mouth and then, going to an early grave and then oh, wow, the guy's dead. Now his stuff's worth $1 million, so so it was in some ways it was kind of great that the Gieger managed to actually enjoy some of his personal success and influence while he was alive, and to sort of reap the benefit. But yeah, he was a very interesting guy. He was a little bit of, I guess, what we would call an edgelord. Now
Most definite.
When he was alive, but I think he was interested in trying to sort of provoke conversations. That was sort of my take on some of the stuff that he was about.
Yeah, his work is the definition of provocative.
Absolutely.
And it's not just provocative, but it's art that's disturbing, but at the same time relatable. It doesn't have that problem with modern art where you have no idea what the hell you're looking at. This is I'm looking at a chair that has a spine and ribs coming off the back of it, and it's tapered and it's black, and it looks like it looks like the background of a landscape in Doom, but it's I'm grossed out by it, but I understand it. At least
sure.
It's not incomprehensible.
No, it's not. It's not postmodern. It's exactly what it appears to be.
Yep, absolutely.
Not that that's any comfort, mind you.
It's not, but I'm not irritated when I look at it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I might be horrified. I might be disgusted. I might wish I hadn't looked at it, but I'm not. I don't want to reach through the internet and find the artist and slap him
That's
for
true.
wasting my time, which is the problem that I have with most modern art, which seems like a giant put on, like a shuck.
Modern art tries to be philosophy more than art. It's trying to tell. It's trying to, in my opinion.
No, I agree,
Um,
100%.
I just like to make me as an artist. I just like to make pretty pictures that I feel proud that I make and that entertain me. And I don't try to think, oh, is there a deep message? I mean, there might be, but nothing intentional. I'm just like, oh, well, it's a dinosaur in space. Well, what were you thinking? I was thinking that there should be a dinosaur in space. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what's it say on the tin, man? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought about giving it a helmet, but I was like, nah. Yeah. Right, yeah.
And you know, with Gieger, there's definitely a meaning or an attempt at a suggestion. I mean, if you look at the birth machine sculpture, which
Yes.
is his first thing, I mean, that's intended to, like, there's a message there,
For sure.
yeah, but it's not a message that's comprehensible. You look at it, you get it. It's designed to be transparent in what it's saying. And it's wonderfully refreshing to know of a famous artist in the modern age who was able to make art this transparent. That's a wonderful thing, and very rare.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I think that one of the best sort of one of the best uses of his art was actually found in Ridley Scott's movie Alien.
And of course,
and you know, Scott was trying to use the basically the artistic designs that Gieger came up with to convey the horror of rape to a male audience.
sure.
Which is exactly what you get with Alien, because you have the face huggers that come and latch onto the face and inject the alien, and it eventually bursts out of the chest and kills the host and then goes and eats everybody else. And that's about as deep as I think as some of the symbolism gets, but it's still symbolism that's comprehensible, right? So
Absolutely.
there's something to be said for, if you're going to communicate something in an artistic way, make sure it's accessible, even if it's terrifying. So
I think accessibility is a mode of art that is looked upon with contempt. I'm not 100% sure why. I have my theories. Something I think just like the way in which industry creates things that are infinitely replaceable, and the way that things like architecture is just like stack layers upon the thing. It's like you look at a skyscraper, there's no adornment, there's no artistry. It's just stack the layer on top of the layer and make it shiny. And we might taper it here or taper it there, and we might make it look a little silly someplace here or other. But overall, it's just like stack the layer upon the layer, and that is aesthetic. It's that thing that got formalized in Bauhaus, where form follows function. And on some level, I understand that. But it's also like the removal of any artistry from industry, I think, has caused a concomitant desire in the artistic world to remove anything that is useful or comprehensible. Just like go the opposite direction so that you at least know you're making art. In order to know you're making art, you have to make it incomprehensible.
Sure. Well, and it's I think there's a certain amount of to be a contemporary artist and successful means that people are going to steal from you almost immediately. And I do think that there's a certain amount of in modern art, I think there's a certain tendency to be sort of inscrutable, because if people if it can't be decoded or deciphered easily, then people are going to hesitate before they try to copy it or steal it. It won't necessarily be dismissed, and if people really rack their brains when they're staring at it, well, maybe you can get some gallery space and, sell a piece. So I think, I sort of see that as it's like a defense mechanism almost. Mm-hmm. But, I'm also, I'm an art appreciator. I am not somebody that makes art. So, I'm a writer, so...
Well, it's kind of like this. If you're a writer and your writing is incomprehensible and dense, then you're a bad writer. If you're an artist, it really depends. The big problem, because technically I'm a graphic designer more than an artist, comes down to this. An artist wants some kind of external validation for his work in the way of accolades and fame. A graphic designer wants external validation for his works in the form of a motherfucking paycheck.
Yep.
And, it's like someone said, oh, well, would you design or draw something that you totally had no connection to and didn't really give a fuck about? And I said, how much am I getting paid here? Seriously, it's like, yeah, sure. I have made many pieces that I would not put my name on voluntarily and will never go up on my portfolio, but I've collected a paycheck for them.
Yeah.
And
sure.
Graphic designers are the whores of the art world. We're like, we're on our back, legs split open.
Yeah.
Give me that money.
Give me that money. Get that cheddar.
Give me that money. Get that cheddar. We're not trying to worry about our artistic integrity. We already know we sold that shit.
Yeah. We are in the process of selling that. And that's okay because what we're creating has some value to someone.
Exactly. It's like, look.
Which is demonstrable.
Sometimes I get to make stuff that I like. Usually the covers I do, actually. But,
Yeah, we usually just, give you an idea and you go crazy with it.
Generally, I sit and think about it for, you guys will give me an idea and I'll sit down and I'll think about it for a good 5 minutes at least. Mm-hmm. Somewhere up to 5 days. I'll run it through my head till in my head I got a pretty good idea of how I'm going to do this and what it's going to look like. And now it's just time for the magic of the mouse and my computer to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Really, I don't know. A lot of other designers do thumbnails. Sometimes I'll do that if I can't work out in my head the layout. But at this point in my career, I just kind of sit back and I just kind of okay, well, this is how it's going to look.
Yeah.
And it looks like that.
At some point you have to put it down and let it lie. You can't keep polishing the same thing over and over and over again. You'll drive yourself crazy.
No, it's like when you're sanding down something and you're trying to get a perfect finish. You can do that, but sometimes you can sand something down to so smooth you've lost all the details in it that made it unique or valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect is the enemy of the complete.
Exactly. That's true if you're a writer as well. At some point you have to let the story be what it is. And you can keep polishing it and keep trying to make it incrementally better, but the cost, not only in terms of you driving yourself crazy, but any time you spend working on one story is not time spent working on something new. So once the thing is done, I'll give it a good solid edit with a red pen and then it has to be what it is because I got other stuff to do.
Sure.
I used to dabble in a little bit of creative writing in college. Enjoyable class, but and a little bit in high school too. I thought I was going to be a writer. I found out I was a better artist. Mm-hmm. And I put that down to experience because what does someone fresh in college really know about life and how things work?
Right, yeah.
Or even how other people think.
Yeah, you don't. You're trying things out until you find out what works and what you get feedback on. And,
you are very correct. There's a certain point that you just have to let a tone of something be the tone of something. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. And not in, the trite way that people use nowadays about things, but just in the simple way of, if you try to perfect and polish every piece you work on, it will have no individuality. It'll just be more of the same. It won't be anything really experimental.
Mm-hmm.
And while Gieger definitely had a style...
I was just thinking of that.
His works, if you see the cover he did for Debbie Harry that he painted...
I was just looking at that.
That is not it is definitely Gieger, but it does not look like anything else he'd done.
No. No, the Cuckoo album,
yeah,
1981, which was I I think this is post Blondie, or in the middle of Blondie taking a break or something. I don't know. And it's just Debbie Harry with her face poked with these divining rods or whatever you might want to call them, and
shish kebab rods. They look like
shish kebab rods, and it's per the rest of Gieger's work. It's striking. It's a little off-putting. It's monochromatic, which is another thing I've noticed in Gieger's work. Like there's very little color variation.
Mm-hmm.
It's all like
it's all neutral colors, and it gives it that coldness, and it's where like the biological intersects with the mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of his artwork was done with an airbrush in black and white. That was his methodology.
That's right. Yeah.
I read that that's how he started out, and then eventually he moved on to like oils and pastels, but that was like during the later half.
That's interesting.
I would have been very interesting to see what he would have done with a decent sculpting program and a 3D printer. That man would have.
I mean, his stuff looks sculpted. It looks like sculpture. I think the birth machine like is a sculpture, or started out as that. Gieger started as an industrial designer. He studied architecture and industrial design in Zurich. Like he was probably thinking all these things that we've been talking about modern architecture, the cold mechanics of industry, and what that does to us on a micro level, on a spiritual level, like the reduction of things to replication, which is what you find in Birth Machine. Like it's a gun shooting out babies, and they're all identical, and they're all like, they all look menacing.
Yep.
And they have no distinct personality, and there's a definite sense of horror and dread in what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, the making bare of things, and just a sense of gothic grotesquerie.
Interestingly enough, he was actually, speaking of influences and things, he was a big fan of Gwar, and whenever...
Nice. I didn't know that.
That's fantastic.
Whenever they would tour in Switzerland and would come to, he'd have them come over and hang out at his castle, which is where the museum is, but he bought a damn castle. And, he'd have them come over because he just really liked their work. And I'm like, okay, this is a man who, just from that alone, if you like Gwar, you don't take your shit seriously.
No.
Okay, if you're over 12 and you like Gwar, you don't take yourself seriously.
No. Gwar is the greatest comedy band of all time.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Gwar is metal laughing at itself.
Yes.
I would have loved to see what kind of album cover he would have done for them.
That would have been. It would have been silly. It would have been like Pink. That would have been the ultimate.
Yeah, that would have been. I shall work in color. Once.
Wait.
Just this one time, only for you guys.
In pink.
In pink, yeah.
I mean, all right, so the name of the castle, listen to this, is the Chateau Saint Germain.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Not the one in Switzerland, not the one in France. But
yeah, no, in Switzerland, yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, it's a legit castle he bought and that they turned into his museum. And, like, if I ever go to Europe, I am totally hitting Switzerland. I'm totally there.
Why do I feel like I know that the Chateau Saint Germain for other reasons? Like it's been around for a while. Chateau Saint Germain.
I think there's one in France.
I think there is one in France,
which is connected to the. I think that's related to the spirit to Saint Germain. I'm not 100% sure.
The Comte Saint Germain that they. What is the word? I know it usually and I cannot remember. It's for when something that or the acropical, the acropical Saint Germain, of which who may or may not existed and may or may not have been immortal. There's a lot of fiction written about that, but that seems to have just the level of whimsy I think appropriate to Geiger, and one might not typically use the term whimsy to describe his work, but I think there's a certain amount of it. I mean, dark whimsy, certainly. But
yeah, I can't find anything about like when it was built, but it's just it's in the municipality of Greyerres and the canton of Freiburg in Switzerland, and it just says that H.R. Geiger lived there and bought it in 1998. So
yeah, they don't say a whole lot.
They don't say a whole lot. It's kind of frustrating. Because if it's a castle, you got to figure it's been around for a while.
I mean, people just don't build... Okay, people do just build castles to have a fucking castle, but that's more of a modern affectation than, like, European... Europeans generally don't... Okay, no, there's that castle over in Bavaria that the Mad King Ludwig...
Well, he was crazy, and he was also a king. So if you are a king, you can build a crazy castle if you want to, and no one says, like, that's not how castles are supposed to be built. Like, it's giant, and it's orange, and it's weird, and that's fine.
No, Bavaria is a special place anyway.
It is.
It's kind of almost France, it's kind of almost Germany, and it's kind of both neither.
Well, and I mean, also, like, European aristocrats and nobility continued to build castles long after the dawn of, like, gunpowder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though, like, having cannon basically, made castles superfluous, because it's like, oh, okay, you've got stone walls. I'm literally just going to roll all of these cannon up to outside and just blow a hole in it and send all my dudes through.
Yeah.
A lot easier to transport than a trebuchet.
Yeah, exactly.
You can fling diseased corpses into the castle, and
that was a siege tactic.
Yes, it was.
Not so easily.
Yeah, cannons are a little messier than that.
I mean, you could try.
Yeah, the military-wise, the castle stopped being useful in like the 14th or 15th century.
Yep.
And but as a demonstration of aristocratic wealth and puissance, they were still making them.
Sure, yeah.
And they became chateaus. They became almost like museums of a life that's already going on, like the chateaus in the Loire or Versailles. They became palaces.
Right. I mean, that's how Geiger's castle operates.
Yeah,
they should rename to Geiger's Castle.
They should. Castle Geiger. That would be. We really have to like make sure we're calling him Gieger because his name is pronounced Gieger. Because
it is. Yeah.
I'm a terribly uncultured American, so we'll just excuse me for that.
No, I wasn't blaming you because I've been doing it too. Because I'm looking at it, it's like H.R. Geiger. That's the way it should. That's the way it flows out of my tongue, but it's not. It's Gieger.
I only learned to say Gieger after he died. So while he was alive, I was calling him Geiger. But then there was an interview with a good friend of his that I listened to on NPR around the time he died, and he was this British fellow, and he was like, "Oh yes, and Gieger would do this, and he would do all of these, he was telling these crazy stories," and I was like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, but he kept saying Gieger, and I was like, "Oh, I think that's how you're supposed to say it."
Yes, and Gieger was born in Chur, which is it's part of like the German part of Switzerland.
Yeah.
But his castle is in the French part of Switzerland, because there's like German Switzerland and French Switzerland and Italian Switzerland, and then there's that fourth language that only exists in Switzerland, which is neither German nor Italian nor French. I think they call it Romansh.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A tiny minority speaks it. It's basically a native Swiss language, but almost no one speaks it. So Gieger is from a German part of Switzerland, and that's why his name would be pronounced like that, because it's spelled Gieger. So that's Guy in the German, but his castle's in the French part of Switzerland. So I'm looking at the Gieger website, and I'm looking at some of the sculpture pieces that are available. I'm looking one of them. It's like it says like a Nubian queen, and it reminds me. It says comes from the year 2002, and it looks like those weird aliens in Attack of the Clones. You know what I mean? Which came out the same year.
Huh.
This heavily elongated body with a very like long form head and like almost a horn sticking back. It looks like those weird white aliens that Obi-Wan Kenobi has a conversation with, and like, oh, we've been making you clones. Oh, really? Who asked you to do that? Well, you did, of course. Huh? That's weird.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
The Nubian Queen, from what I understand, was actually recycled from a mic stand design he did for that Korn dude.
Oh, that could
really?
be.
He was, because the guy, he commissioned Gieger for 5 different, whatever that twat's name is, from Korn.
Jonathan Davis. Yeah.
Are we not a fan of Korn? I have no opinion about Korn.
It's sing softly. Does this sound familiar, Mike? Sing softly and strained, like that wanker from Korn.
Yes.
What is that from?
That was the directions for Mr. Denton, I Shoot You in the Anus, which was a track that a friend of mine wrote the lyrics to.
Okay, that's fantastic.
And that which Michael features vocally on.
Yep.
That's fantastic. I like that wanker from Korn.
That wanker from Korn. But yeah, he commissioned 5 mic stands and only took 2. He only wanted 2 of them. So Gieger recycled one of them into the Nubian Queen.
Okay, makes sense.
Because I'm going to tell you what, that is artist to a T. If we have something that we did for someone and they don't end up using it, we reuse it for something else.
Of course.
We don't waste not, want not, man. Creativity is not always on tap when you want it. So
that's true. That is 100% true. Like one of the stories in the most recent UJ that just came out, the To Kill a Demon story. I've been sitting on that thing forever. Like I wrote that before we ever did UJ, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's always been part of the Drunk Vampire Hunter universe, because I always had this idea of like, what if the Knights Hospitaller, who are one of the Crusader orders that are still around, they're mostly they're now called the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, and they do mostly humanitarian missions. Like they don't fight anymore. But like I had this idea of like, what if that was just a front, and they were the arm of, like, they were the Vatican's demon hunting arm. Like they killed vampires and stuff. Like how cool would that be? So that's what kind of led me towards that, and then that's kind of where the whole Drunk Vampire Hunter reality came out of, because they always feature in the background of the stories. Like DVH isn't one of them,
right?
But he has encounters with them, which are sometimes friendly and sometimes not. But like, yeah, I had that story written forever, and I had to double check to make sure I haven't already used it before I gave it to Kieran so he could put it in the issue. I checked like every issue of the magazine we have to make sure that hadn't popped already. But it hasn't, so...
No, yeah, it had not been used. It had not been there previously.
So you constantly, anything that doesn't get published and doesn't get used, can be used and repurposed in another way. It can be an inspiration for another thing. Like, I think I wrote that story and published it on Medium back in the day.
Yeah, like, it's not uncommon for me to take artwork that I kept that, well, this never got used, and then like something comes up that calls for exactly that kind of situation. Like, oh, well, guess what's getting used now? Hasn't happened yet with UJ, but generally, well, you know, again, like Andrew said earlier, you guys just basically give me a concept and let me run wild, but generally you have some notion of what you want. And some of my older stuff was like very specific pieces that were for very specific purposes that aren't really going to work for a cover. You know, they're like logos or something like that. You know, and while you can adapt logos for something like that, you can't really adapt logos to like a cover. It doesn't really work that way. You got to have some other element in there. So Gieger being able to recycle a mic stand into just a standing sculpture, not a big ask.
No. No, that makes sense.
I do, I kind of wish he would have had a chance to work with David Lynch, because imagine the movie that would have produced.
I feel as though if he'd been a little more involved in Lynch's Dune, it might have been even more striking, because the visual elements of Lynch's Dune are the most interesting parts about it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very strong.
The story is where it gets all messy, and the weird acting choices and some of the weird casting choices. But visually, every time you watch Dune, you're like, this looks so...
Oh, yeah.
It's very striking, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good thing for that film, of that story to have, because that's one of the things about reading the novel, is how odd it is. Odd and yet familiar. Yeah. So it creates a striking world. So that art style fit that story. It's just a shame that the rest of the choices of it were... I think more people needed to dial Lynch back a bit, or just give him some other... maybe he just wasn't the right guy for that project.
Lynch did... Okay, we're going to have nothing left for our Doom podcast if we keep this up.
That's true. That's true. We better put a pin in it.
Or we could just take all these excerpts from talking about Dune for all the podcasts and remix them into its own podcast.
A remixed podcast. The podcast that is not a podcast.
This is Dune because we talked about it so much through every episode.
It's like a later Miles Davis album.
Here's the Supercuts version that has just all the Dune clips. Yeah.
Note the change in the voices of microphones and tonality. That was intentional. This is all what it takes. We are professionals, damn it.
We know what we're doing.
What was that line from Hunter S. Thompson that he used to put in all that? We are, of course, professionals.
We're responsible people.
Where do they get off sandbagging a doctor of journalism?
Don't take any guff from these swine. Yeah. God, it's a great movie. So I'm looking at some of the other pieces of that Geiger that got into a movie that didn't come out. A movie called The Tourist. It's on the website, and looking at the art concepts that are they're very familiar. They're very they're definitely him, and I'm trying to distill the mood of his art, because it's always horrifying, it's always grotesque, but the things that he creates, the characters, for lack of a better word, that he creates, always feel like obscenely alive, even though they're often chained, which I think is of a theme with what we've been talking about with his work. And I think these things are both horrifying and yet bizarrely sympathetic.
Yeah, well, and it's the convergence of something that's biological and therefore familiar. Because the whole pattern matching brains that we have, we're like, hey, that looks vaguely human, because people are finely attuned to looking for other things that look like people, and so you see these things that are familiar, but the grotesque element comes in where you realize, oh, that's not a natural shape, and it's because it's merged, with this industrial element, with this mechanical element, and that's sort of where the horror comes in, where it creeps in, because you're like, oh no,
yeah, and there's always a fluidity to the shapes that he makes, even though there's that industrial suffocation aspect. It's never square.
Right. No, yeah, it's got the biological symmetry. So what makes some of his creatures, terrifying is how realistic they look, in a way. I mean, the xenomorph is terrifying because it's completely, it's alien, of course. It looks entirely plausible. It looks biologically complete. You're like,
there's nothing fantastic about it.
Right. Yeah. It's believable, which is perhaps, some of what makes a lot of his stuff terrifying. Some of it is too out there to be believable, but some of the stuff that makes me squirm about his art is the stuff that's not too far out there. It's not too far away. It's the stuff that's, you're like, I don't know, maybe this is a cryptid and it could actually exist somewhere. It's that almost believable element of some of his work, which, that's the scariest stuff.
Yeah. Then you got Species, which is H.R. Geiger just gave me the weirdest boner. I've got the weirdest direction right now. I don't even know. I don't feel good about myself.
Why?
Here I am.
Why am I reacting this way? I don't like it.
I know this is not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
But there you go, like Species, and Species again, an alien creature, but very distinct from the xenomorph.
Mm-hmm.
Nipple tentacles, notwithstanding. Oh, you lovable scamp, H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, you lovable scamp. Well, this is
said nobody until just now.
Said nobody until just now. Yeah, yeah. I'm pouring through the website as we speak, and I'm looking at some of the magazine covers that he did, and this isn't what I wanted.
Yeah,
but there's
said often by someone looking at H.R. Geiger stuff.
This isn't what I wanted. Yeah, there's this looks like an engine, but it's flowing like bones and a spine. That Gieger bar, those Gieger bars in Switzerland, they make me think of bone churches.
Yep. And that's basically what they're modeled after.
Yeah, which is whenever I tell people that those things exist, they don't believe me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I tell them to Google them, and they're always like, how is this real? How this is so, I think, especially in America, so removed from, what we conceive as a church being, and we don't know, because our ancestors ran away from it, the extent to which ancient and medieval and early modern Christianity, like the level of suffering that was involved in that, the catacombs, and all those were the bones of the monks. Those are usually monastic churches, the bone churches. Like, they're not trying to make a statement. They're not trying to be edgy. It's just a giant memento mori of,
Which is probably for the best, because I'm looking also at his filmography, and he made a movie called, I kid you not, this is the translated American title, Killer Condom.
Oh, God.
So, dick jokes, we got them.
I have no words. I have no words for that.
Don't look at the picture. I mean, you can
I don't.
It, but
I'm not gonna.
It's not helping me, man.
Nah, we'll leave that alone.
I'm not touching that.
I suffer so that you all may be spared.
Yeah.
I mean, for now, at some point, when y'all gonna be chilling, writing a story. Hey, so you got any ideas for an image? Then just send that. Oh God! Like, oh well, it had to come out of me at some point. I can only maintain the. I'm like the Ghostbusters ghost trap. I can only contain the horror before so long until I vomit it upon the world. So, much like Gieger, I would say.
Yeah. Ghostbusters is one of those movies that's very low key on the horror of it.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a comedy and its tone is comic, but there are always little elements of it where the dread is real.
Oh, for sure.
Like, Gozer is a scary dude.
Gozer's an elder god for all intents.
Yeah, it's very Lovecraftian. Like, there's
not even like
Keymaster and Gatekeeper and those giant monster dogs and things that should not be, and then just when you've had too much of that, then we all turn into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and it's fine. Yeah.
Ray,
what did you do? And it plays that with a very sleight of hand, so it lets the horror sneak in, which makes it pretty much the opposite of what's going on in Alien, where there is no humor whatsoever, and
No.
there aren't even any jokes. Like, the last guy who laughs in that movie is the guy who has the alien pop out of his chest, and
Yep.
that's kind of what I see in his work. There is no humor. There is no lightness. It is very grim. It is very goth. It is Mary Shelley levels of goth. Like,
Well,
none more goth.
And it's super stark.
Yes.
With a lot less implied sex with Lord Byron.
Yeah, a lot less implied sex with Lord Byron.
Yeah. Although with Gieger, you could see Gieger actually creating a sculpture that's Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, and a chainsaw get it on. Right?
Oh.
You know.
All one entity.
Yeah, they all have to be
all
one
together,
entity. Yeah, that's the only way that would work. Oh, I'm picturing it now as you're describing it. I'm picturing it. My brain is putting it together. I'm creating the pattern. Yeah. Oi.
I always wondered... Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I've got nothing on. I was just going to reiterate my point.
Like I always wondered at what Gieger thought. I'm sure he saw like Tetsuo the Iron Man, and I always wondered at what he thought about that, if he saw it, like what his take on it was, because I always thought that it was, because it's a Japanese horror film, which is frankly difficult to watch. But I always thought that it was clearly influenced by Gieger, because it's basically about your average sort of dorky salaryman that for whatever inexplicable reason just sort of starts to extrude metal parts from like his body until he basically becomes a machine himself. And it's definitely like a body horror movie, which is, the sort of the discomforting elements of Gieger are certainly there.
Yeah.
And I always thought that the fellas that made that movie must have drawn influence from him. But maybe not. I'm just spitballing.
I'm getting that vibe. And that and maybe some Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
certainly some Cronenberg.
I picture him working with Gieger.
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of amazed that didn't happen.
Yeah, same here, actually. Come to think of it, I should check the movie credits again. But I don't know.
He did The Fly, didn't Cronenberg do?
Cronenberg did The Fly, sort of the definitive version. His was the remake that kind of eclipsed the original, and that's the one that everyone thinks of now, except for like the "Help me, help me" segment from the original.
That's the only thing that people remember. Yeah.
Yeah, no, The Fly. The Fly would have been far more, I think, biomechanical and grotesque looking if he would have been in on that. Though that would have been a very interesting look if you think about it.
Yeah.
Well, and I always thought the teleporter in The Fly and then the sequel looked an awful lot like some tech out of Aliens specifically.
Yeah.
Just they look like a hive almost. They're kind of creepy.
I mean, I'm looking at the movie poster for The Fly, and it's got a Giegerish kind of feel to it.
Yeah. As far as I know, they didn't use. I don't think he consulted for that, though. I don't think he was.
No, it doesn't look like they did.
It does not. I mean.
But this is also like you can be an influential artist, and people will not necessarily take your ideas, but you're an influence, right? And I think this is something that happened with him. We have actually mentioned all of these different areas where we have stuff that kind of looks like his stuff or has the vibe of his stuff, and I think that I would argue that that's him being an influence in popular culture.
I would say so, yeah.
I will be damned. He did a Levi's commercial.
Who did?
Gieger.
Gieger.
Oh, all right.
Levi's Type 1 jeans, bold since 2003. Yeah, he did one. You can see it in the train design.
Huh.
It's really, really interesting. And I'm like, for my jeans? My jeans are going to try to face fuck me now? What the hell? I mean, come on, man. I just got away from Alien. That's a face full of alien wing wong, man. It's terrible.
That's weird. That's weird.
Look, man. Look, I just report the facts. I do.
No one blames you, Kieran. No one blames you. It's not your fault.
Hey Hans, hi Hans, do you want a paycheck? Yeah, sure, sounds good. Yeah, you want to do a Levi's commercial?
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're making him sound like the fat German kid from The Simpsons, and I love it. Yeah, I've been making the Levi's commercial for you.
Thank you, Uter. I mean HR. Yeah, no, yeah.
So, und my country.
No.
It's like, yeah, I will make you as a commercial. Is it okay if it's slightly psychosexual? I mean, we hired you, man.
That's what you're here for. What you're here for.
We know we've seen your work, man. We're not exactly expecting, clowns and puppies and unicorns here, at least not the normal ones. So
clowns and puppies and unicorns that are all mixed together and trapped in a stove or something. That's what you'd get.
Possibly merged with a clarinet just for that extra biomechanical vibe.
You know what I'm thinking of now? We've been talking about him and that the horror in his art comes from the melding of biology and mechanics of that which is alive and that which is not. And we've been talking about it in terms of horror. And in our second episode, when we beat the horror genre to death for an hour, we were talking about how the horror as the confrontation of the dread sublime.
Yes.
And I think what Gieger's giving us is that the world that we are living in is subsumed with that dread. Like, there's definitely an element where his art is a very definitive critique, or maybe not even an intentional critique, just like showing us the horror that's in our world.
Yeah, well, he's showing us where we already live.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to deny many people in this world are trying to very much ignore.
Of course.
Oh, sure.
Who can blame them?
Well, yeah, but I think the best way to overcome horror is to acknowledge horror, really.
That's the purpose of the genre, but that's not a fun thing to do all the time.
No.
It really isn't.
There are people who I know who absolutely 100% don't ever want to watch horror films, just because that process can be so unpleasant. And I myself, I can only do it in small doses. Like, I'm never the sort of person who wants to let's settle down and watch like a new horror movie every week. Like, no, I'll check out Midsummer, and then I won't watch anything with horror for a while. Or
me and my wife have an arrangement because she loves horror and I'm tolerant of it.
Mm-hmm.
So our arrangement is I must have pie if I am to watch horror. I need to enjoy tasty pie, especially for Midsummer, man.
A spoonful of pie helps the medicine go down.
It does, man. Like Midsummer or what was that? Hereditary.
Yeah, those are crazy movies.
Don't even get me started about The Witch, which
I love The Witch.
That was a great one.
Have you seen The Lighthouse?
Not yet.
I have not.
You should check that one out. It's the same director as The Witch.
It has Willem Dafoe, which already compelled me.
Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, and they're both great in it.
Yeah, I may have to look into that. I'll just have to see what.
It's weird.
I'm going to have.
I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a horror film, The Lighthouse, although it has elements of that. It's more like a chronicle of madness.
Mm.
So
is it like a literal psychodrama?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you could make that claim. I enjoyed it a lot. Another film that was kind of like a horror movie, I think I like things that are almost horror without being full horror.
Like a thriller?
Yeah. But with some is there's a movie came out this last year called The Vast of Night, and it's like basically an alien movie, but it's the word alien is never used once.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's set in like the 50s in New Mexico. And through the process of just like, what's interfering with the radio, they're getting signals, and then they're getting information from people who are calling in and providing them information. And our two protagonists work their way towards a discovery of alien beings in a very Roswell kind of way.
Fascinating.
And Roswell is never mentioned, even though it takes place in New Mexico. And it's a really cool, it's clearly done by a brand new director who wants to make his mark. And I think it's still on Amazon Prime, so check that out. Again, not horror, but it's subsumed with dread. The unknown.
Because of you, just pictured H.R. Geiger's Midsummer, and
no, thank you.
That is not sitting well in my imagination.
Why would you do that, Kieran? What have you done? What have you done? That I will blame you for.
Who put the flower crown on the xenomorph?
No.
It's really pissed off now. Yeah, no.
That is.
How can you tell? It was pissed off before. It's the xenomorph.
That is not goth. He's not happy.
No, he is not happy. Not at all. Not at all. That's just. It looked.
But she's the queen. I wanted her to look pretty. Yeah, well, she's going to eat you now.
To be fair, she was probably going to do that before.
She was going to do that anyway. Yeah, no.
That's what they do.
Now she's just a lot angrier about it. I don't.
She's going to eat you, and she's going to throw your head against the wall when she's done.
Now it's just going to have a certain amount of pettiness on it. Before it was just pure survival instinct. I consume, I eat. But now there's going to be a certain level of spite and pettiness involved. So.
Spiteful aliens.
Spiteful, petty aliens.
That might actually be good, because then they might turn on each other.
Yeah.
Well, which is always the line from Aliens that I remember. Like, you never see them, turning on each other for a piece of profit. And it's like, yeah, that's because they can't.
They're a hive mind.
They're a hive mind.
They're like giant space bees.
It's not virtue if you're not tempted. Like, that's one of those lines in a movie that's like good, but I always also makes me want to argue with it, which happens a lot.
Well, it's one of those applying like the theory of mind to something like the xenomorph probably wouldn't work, because while there's an intelligence at work, it's not how we sort of view intelligence. It doesn't fit the model for sort of our own worldview.
No. There is canniness, but there's not self-awareness. There's intellect without self-awareness.
It has no understanding of itself as an entity.
Merely an understanding of how to achieve its goals through different methods,
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really sentience as far as I can see it, but
no.
Again, what do I know?
No.
No, I agree. It's not sentience. There's no capacity to choose otherwise.
Not in the least.
There's no consciousness
which
in
is
that.
a kind of a terror onto itself.
Yes.
Especially for our species, which one of the big hallmarks is we value a certain amount of independence, self awareness, individuality,
and the free will.
Exactly.
Having free will.
Death of the individuality. That's also not as big of a theme in Alien, but it's definitely there.
It's totally there. Yeah.
Definitely
for sure.
After you get your unplanned date with the face hugger,
Mm-hmm.
you have your meal, and then everything just goes bad. Everything just goes bad.
Here's a strange fact that I just popped at me out of the Wikipedia. It says Gieger studied interior and industrial design at the School of Commercial Art in Zurich in the 60s, and he made his first paintings as art therapy.
Oh, as art therapy.
As art therapy, which I find interesting because I didn't know art therapy was that old, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, what was he trying to therapize? Like, what was he dealing with? We don't.
What was he trying to work through?
What was he trying to work through? What was he trying to work through? I mean, if you're someone who's born in 1940, as he was, then the reality of what went on in the world in your childhood, that World War II, and not just the war, but that's the industrialization of death, which was the feature of both world wars. The industrialization of death, like that was part of the experience of the First War, and it was part of the experience of the Second War, and Switzerland was largely, was uninvolved. It was neutral, but there's the as an observer, a lot of people escaped to Switzerland during the war to escape from the Nazis.
I mean, if the Sound of Music is any indicator, yes.
Yeah. So I think he might not even have known what he was dealing with, but he was dealing with something. And he was trying to, like, as Mike said, like, show us the world that we were living in.
No, and one thing that I find again and again in a lot of the designs for his art is almost impersonal element to it, no matter how sort of intimate the art itself may be, because of it contains the figures or however they look. It's all sort of strangely impersonal, and I think that's like with the birth machine, for example. Like, it's a very confrontational piece, but all of those little babies that are being shot out at the gun all look the same. Mm-hmm. So it's this. Here's this grotesque thing, this sublime thing that, is sort of visually confrontational, and yet everything that's birthed by this machine is the same. Mm-hmm. So it's, sort of the elimination of self. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it just repeats this over and over again, but...
So we're really just talking about a prophet of alienation.
In some ways, I think. Yeah. I think in some ways. I think he's trying to show us that it's all around us, and that we do kind of, that the modern world is kind of alienating, and that it's right there. We already live there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like apparently he also did a very radical and different Batmobile design for Batman Forever that did not end up in the film.
I want to see this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Holy, I just filled my pants, Batman.
Batmobile design. I wonder if there's a picture of that. Tell me there's a picture of that somewhere. Oh, good Lord. It looks like an insect.
Oh, good God. Lordy,
that is not a Batmobile.
You can't drive through Gotham like that.
You can't.
You in Arkham.
You cannot drive in that.
No, you can't.
I'm not even sure how that thing moves.
I mean, you can't. I mean, you can try. He's got another unused design that's a little less insane, but nonetheless, apparently those certain elements of his design, of other designs, made themselves into.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at the Batmobile from Batman Forever,
yeah,
it's kind of spiny.
Yeah,
like it looks like it's got ribs.
Yeah, nowhere near as insane as that. That looks like a chromosome, honestly, Batmobile.
Mm-hmm.
You drive through Gotham in that, and then you stop by Arkham to drop off like the Riddler or something. They say, "Can you come to a room here for a minute?"
Yeah, why don't you come have a sit down with us? Yeah. Well, just sit down over here.
We need to talk through.
Yeah.
What is that out there, and what made you think that was even feasible to drive to do? You can't go through Gotham like that.
Looking at the the Batcave looks like in Batman Forever. It's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
And it's spooky, and there's some grotesquerie in there, because it's not like just the stark, plain black Batcave of like the first movie.
Yeah, like I can't remember what happened in Forever. I know there were only 2 good Batman movies, and
From that era.
yeah, was Forever the second one?
Forever was the third one.
Third one.
Oh, then it wasn't a good.
I like it. No, I like it better than the second one. I'm not a fan of Batman Returns.
Okay.
I'm not a fan.
But Batman Returns features music from Susie and the Banshees.
That's cool, and I normally am on board with that sort of thing, but I just, narrative wise, that movie was kind of tedious.
It was a mess. Yeah.
It's like, you've got Danny DeVito.
It's a great character movie.
And you've got a penguin, and you've got Catwoman, and somehow the actual bad guy is some business dude.
It's Christopher Walken, man. Don't sell him short. Max Shrek.
Look, that's not about Christopher Walken. It's just like, who is this guy, and why is he the bad guy, and why is it not the penguin? Like, and why is the penguin looking like he's trying to poop, and it's not happening? And
because maybe Danny DeVito had to poop that whole time, and it could not happen.
That's terrible. It's really dull. It's not my favorite. Like, I would rather watch Batman Forever because it's got Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and he's out of his mind, and that's enjoyable.
I mean, there is that.
He does chew the scenery.
He chews it with relish.
I feel, though, that there are really only, as an aside here, 2 really good Jim Carrey movies, and that would be The Mask and Me, Myself, and Irene.
I never saw that one.
I found a lot of his other outing. Oh, Me, Myself, and Irene is classic, dude. You gotta see that shit.
I liked Liar Liar.
Actually,
and I'm just like,
I mean, believe it or not, like I actually enjoyed The Cable Guy because it's not really a comedy.
No.
It's a critique of media and how it influences people, and it's basically a story about a man that was raised by his television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that when it came out. I didn't. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I've of course seen the medieval times scene.
Yeah,
many times.
Like the whole thing's actually worth watching.
and he was also, his very first movie was Once Bitten. That was an interesting. I remember that one.
Isn't that a vampire movie?
It is a vampire movie.
Is that the movie that has Nicolas Cage and the "You Don't Say" meme? Is that where that comes from, or is that a different movie?
No, but funny story. That movie in Blu-ray releases have been paired with Once Bitten as a double feature. So there's an association. But it's the same movie.
Okay.
One is a comedic romp. Someone said it's like Fright Night meets Porky's.
Sounds right. Sounds right.
And the other is Nicolas Cage losing his goddamn mind on film. Not unusual.
No, that's kind of his wheelhouse.
Well, yeah. Apparently, I read something that Nick Cage acts like he's in a German expressionist film in every film he's in. No, seriously, that's what he's going for. He's acting like he's in a German expressionist film in every film he's in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I cannot argue with this.
Yeah, I mean, ain't that something?
Okay, check this out. The internet has yielded more results. Geiger did a cover of he had a compendium of images that he published in 1977, and he named it the Necronomicon as a shout out to
Right.
Lovecraft, and it says here that the guys at id Software used a lot of the imagery in Necronomicon when they were putting together the original Doom.
That's not surprising.
So it's all there. It's all there.
There's Andrew with his board with the strings and the thumbtacks all arranged. My theories are sound, you correct.
I do have a corkboard in here. I do have thumbtacks. It's mostly got pictures on it, but I could change that. I could start putting the Geiger compendium together. Gieger, damn it.
What you just throw some additional Gieger pictures up on it, and then do the string and to the other pictures, which clearly are not related, but in the depths of your madness, truly now are. And that's how there's alien lizards and targets. Alien lizards.
Don't you see? It's all become quite clear.
Pull that back a few feet.
Wake up, sheeple!
I think we have wandered into a different podcast.
That happens. Welcome to the show, Kieran. That's if we don't talk about like 8 different subjects up to and including the one we're actually ostensibly talking about, we're not doing it properly.
Oh, hell, man, I can't keep on a single subject for long without meandering off into some direction that probably is highly inappropriate and best not explored.
And that's why you're here, Kieran. That's why you're here.
Well,
we brought you in for that.
Also, if you're a listener and you don't like tangents, what are you doing listening to podcasts in the first place?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Facts, as they say.
I listen to D&D podcasts, and they go off on tangents like you would not believe.
I believe that. I think D&D, that's pretty... D&D is a giant tangent, right?
It is. As a longtime player, and I'm not just a customer. I'm also the president. I wish I could get some D&D art money. Good God!
No one under the age of 30 gets that reference, Kieran.
Nobody with a full head of hair gets that reference.
That's true. It's facts. All right. So, how do we want to? Have we summed? I think we've been hitting the same point like a million times and just looking at it from a bunch of different angles, like a custom set of dice.
Oh yeah.
I called it back.
You brought it back.
I brought it back.
I see what you're doing there. Very clever. How's that working out for you? Being clever.
Oh, well played, clerks. Now that's an obscure reference.
I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
And yet,
here we are.
well, I think it's about time we put a pin in this episode.
I think we should. I think we've got this. So,
I think we've covered. So in summation, Gieger, Geiger, whatever.
Geiger.
Very creative, kind of creepy, makes me feel bad about myself in ways I'm not ready to confront yet.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And his influence is, pretty. I mean, it's all over the place.
He's got his tentacles in all the things, as it were.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife's going to hate that when she hears that.
His tentacles in all the things.
We'll edit it out in post.
Well, yeah, I will tighten this up. We're at the 85-minute mark.
Yeah, we'll probably be able to cut that down to maybe 50 minutes or so. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, we'll see.
I always cut out like all the dead space and us going like, what was I saying? Duh.
I is an intelligent speaker of stuff.
Me smart man, speech good.
Yeah. Oh, so you're the one that makes us sound more erudite. That's beautiful.
Yeah, erudite. Oh, look at you.
I was a lit major, man.
Dropping the $10 words on us.
I may not have gotten my degree in literature, but I did study it, goddammit.
That counts. You put in the time, if not necessarily the work.
God, if I have to discuss the cultural implications and significance of Gilgamesh one more god.
Poor Gilgamesh, he'll never rest.
Yeah, that's what he wanted, but...
Yeah. The irony is rich and piquant. So, all right. I think we've done the thing. I think everybody should
Indeed
do themselves a favor and check out the Unnamed Journal issue 24 that just popped on Gumroad and on our Patreon, and with one of Kieran's most interesting space dinosaur images. And we will come pin your ear back and chatter at you another time. For Shallow and Pedantic, I am Andrew.
And I'm Mike.
I am Kieran.
And we will chat at you next time. Good night.
Good night.